Children like you don't get special treatment. Back to your seat. No meal for you." The flight attendant's words cut through the cabin air like ice, loud enough that several passengers looked up from their magazines and devices. The girl, no more than 9 years old, sat frozen, eyes wide with confusion that quickly melted into hurt as tears began to stream down her small face. The meal tray that should have been hers sat on the cart just inches away, but the flight attendant, Heather Blackwell, according to her gleaming name tag, stood like a wall between the child and the food she needed. Her lips formed a tight line, her eyes cold and unforgiving as she stared down at the little girl. An elderly woman in the adjacent seat stood up shakily, her voice trembling with indignation. "How dare you speak to this child that way? She's done nothing wrong." But Heather didn't budge. Instead, she straightened her perfectly pressed uniform and doubled down. "This child is being disruptive. No meal service. It's policy." What Heather Blackwell didn't know was that a man in first class was watching through the thin curtain divider. His jaw clenched, tight hands gripping the armrests so hard his knuckles turned white. And what she definitely didn't know was who he really was. Because in just a few hours, this woman's entire career, her reputation, everything she'd worked for over 15 years would come crashing down. All because of what she did to one innocent child on this flight. But to understand how this moment came to be, how a simple act of cruelty at 35,000 feet led to one of the most dramatic firings in airline industry history, we need to go back. Back to 3 hours earlier, before the confrontation, before the tears, before everything changed forever. Let me tell you a story about discrimination at 35,000 feet, about a father's love, and about how justice sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. Before we dive deeper, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And if you believe in holding people accountable for their actions, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. This is a story that needs to be shared. 3 hours earlier at Chicago O'Hare International Airport Terminal 3 was a hurricane of spring break travelers. Families rushed past with oversized luggage, business travelers typed furiously on laptops, and airline staff managed the chaos with practiced efficiency. But sitting alone on a hard plastic chair at gate C-17 was 9-year-old Zoe Phillips, and she was terrified. Zoe clutched a small wooden compass in her right hand, running her thumb over its smooth surface the way she always did when nervous. It was a gift from her father when she was 7. "So, you always know which way is home," he had told her. Her left hand adjusted the purple cardigan over her yellow dress, an outfit she'd chosen carefully the night before. Her dark hair was braided neatly with colorful beads that clicked softly when she moved her head, each one picked to match her favorite colors. Her small backpack sat at her feet, packed with everything her mother had insisted she'd need: a book about a girl detective that she was halfway through, a sketch pad, and colored pencils, a change of clothes just in case, and snacks for the journey, though her mother had reminded her that she'd get a proper meal on the plane. But what Zoe needed most in that moment wasn't in any backpack. What she needed was courage. This was her first time flying alone. Her first time being an unaccompanied minor, a term that sounded both grown-up and terrifying at the same time. Zoe's parents had divorced 3 years ago, but it was one of those rare separations where they still respected and cared for each other. Her mother, Jasmine, was a dedicated nurse at Cook County Hospital, working double shifts to make ends meet and build a better life for them. Her father, Michael, had moved to New York for work, but they'd agreed on shared custody. Zoe would spend holidays and school breaks with him. Just that morning, Jasmine had knelt down, taking Zoe's small hands in hers. "Baby, I'm so sorry I can't take you to Dad's this time. These double shifts are helping us save for that house we talked about, the one with the big backyard for your birthday parties." Remember, Zoe had nodded, trying to be brave even though her stomach felt like a jar of butterflies had been let loose inside. "The gate agent is going to take special care of you," Jasmine continued. You'll get this cool lanyard that tells everyone you're traveling by yourself, and the flight attendants will check on you the whole time. Dad will be waiting for you the moment you land. Okay. Zoe had hugged her mother tight, breathing in her familiar scent of coconut oil and hospital antiseptic. I'll be okay, Mom. I'm a big girl now. But sitting in that gate area, watching families board together, watching other kids hold their parents' hands. Zoe didn't feel like a big girl at all. She felt small and alone and scared. What if she got on the wrong plane? What if she got lost? What if something happened and nobody helped her? Then a cheerful voice broke through her worried thoughts. You must be Zoe Phillips. A gate agent with warm brown eyes and a bright smile approached, holding a yellow lanyard. Her name tag read Lucia Mendez. I'm Lucia, and I'm going to be your special helper today. This is your unaccompanied minor lanyard. She placed it gently around Zoe's neck. Pretty cool, right? It means everyone on the flight knows you're VIP. Very important passenger. The lanyard held a plastic card with Zoe's name, flight number, destination, and emergency contact information displayed in large, clear font. Now we're going to board you first before everyone else. How awesome is that? And I'll walk you all the way to your seat and introduce you to the flight attendants. They're going to take excellent care of you until we get to New York, where your dad is waiting. Sound good? Zoe nodded, her anxiety easing just a little. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. Maybe being brave wasn't about not being scared. Maybe it was about being scared, but doing it anyway. She remembered what her father had taught her last summer when a girl at day camp had made fun of her hair. They'd been sitting on the porch swing at his apartment watching the sunset paint the New York skyline golden. Zoe Bear, he'd said, using his special nickname for her, I want you to remember something important. You belong everywhere you go. She'd looked up at him confused. What do you mean, Daddy? I mean that sometimes people might make you feel like you don't belong somewhere, like you're not good enough or you're different or you're not welcome. But that's never true. You are smart, you are kind, and you have every right to be wherever you are. Like when Maddie said my beads were weird, she'd asked. Exactly like that, he'd nodded. And when that happens, I want you to remember our special mantra. Can you say it with me? Together, they'd recited, I belong everywhere I go. And if anyone ever makes you feel like you don't, he'd prompted. I stay calm, I speak clearly, and I remember who I am. She'd finished. Now, clutching her compass in the busy airport, she whispered those words to herself. I belong everywhere I go. The compass felt warm in her hand, a small piece of her father she could hold on to. We're ready to start boarding now, Lucia announced, breaking Zoe from her thoughts. Let's get you settled on the plane first. Zoe stood, slipping the compass into her cardigan pocket and hoisting her backpack onto her shoulders. Lucia led her down the jet bridge, explaining everything as they went. This is the door to the aircraft. The flight attendants will be right inside to greet you. Remember, they know you're traveling alone, and they'll check on you throughout the flight. As promised, a smiling flight attendant greeted them at the door. He was tall, with kind eyes, and a name tag that read, Diego Alvarez. Well, hello there. You must be our special passenger today, he said, bending slightly to be at Zoe's eye level. I'm Diego, and I'll be one of your flight attendants today. What's your name, Zoe Phillips? She answered quietly. It's very nice to meet you, Zoe Phillips. Let me show you to your seat, and I'll explain everything you need to know about our flight. Diego led Zoe down the aisle to seat 14B, a window seat in the middle of the economy cabin. Lucia handed him Zoe's paperwork, which included details about her meal requirements and emergency contacts. Looks like you have a special meal request, Diego noted, scanning the paperwork. Don't worry, we have that all set up for you. I'll make sure you get it when we serve lunch. It's because I'm allergic to peanuts, Zoe explained, finding her voice. And shellfish. Thank you for letting me know. That's very important information, Diego said seriously. We take allergies very seriously on our flights. Lucia helped Zoe get settled, showing her how to buckle her seatbelt and where to store her backpack. "Remember, Zoe, if you need anything at all, just press this button right here." Lucia pointed to the call button above the seat. "A flight attendant will come help you, and Diego will be checking on you regularly." "I sure will," Diego confirmed. "You're in good hands, Zoe." For the first time since arriving at the airport, Zoe felt a small flutter of excitement replace some of the fear. Maybe this adventure would be okay after all. In the crew lounge of Terminal 3, flight attendant Heather Blackwell applied another coat of lipstick, examining her reflection with critical precision. At 39, with 15 years of service at Skylight Airways, Heather was a veteran of the skies. Her uniform was impeccable. Every pleat knife sharp, every button fastened, her scarf tied with perfect symmetry. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a tight bun that accentuated her sharp cheekbones and keen blue eyes. Those eyes, however, had lost their sparkle years ago. "Another full flight," she muttered to her colleague Sofia Rodriguez, a 31-year-old flight attendant who was scrolling through her phone. Spring break crowds, screaming kids, entitled parents, and everyone thinking the rules don't apply to them. Sophia looked up, barely suppressing a sigh. She'd worked with Heather enough times to recognize the warning signs of a difficult shift ahead. In the 3 years they'd flown together, she'd watched Heather change, become harder, colder, quicker to find fault with passengers, especially certain passengers. "Kids are part of the job," Heather Sophia said carefully. "Families are what keep the airlines in business. Some of us still believe in maintaining standards," Heather snapped, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from her skirt. "This isn't a playground. It's commercial aviation." Sophia returned to her phone, but not before noticing the bitterness etched into the lines around Heather's mouth. The change had become more pronounced in the past 3 months, ever since the incident, as the crew called it, behind closed doors. Heather had applied for the lead flight attendant position, a promotion she'd been eyeing for years. She'd prepared meticulously, studied the manuals, practiced her interview responses, called in favors from senior staff. She'd been so certain the position would be hers. After all, she had seniority, an impeccable record, and had never called in sick in 15 years. Then they'd given it to Taylor Williams instead, Taylor with her business degree and her 5 years of experience. Taylor with her innovative ideas for improving customer satisfaction. Taylor with her effortless rapport with both crew and passengers. Taylor, who was 28, 11 years younger than Heather. The rejection had cracked something fundamental in Heather's professional facade. She'd filed a formal complaint claiming age discrimination, but the airline had documentation showing Taylor's customer service scores were consistently higher. The complaint was dismissed. Since then, Heather had become increasingly rigid, increasingly unforgiving, increasingly selective about which passengers deserved her courtesy. "Looks like we're on flight 847 together," Sophia said, checking the crew assignments on her tablet. "New York JFK," Heather nodded curtly. "Who else? Diego Alvarez in economy with us, Victoria Murray as lead." Something flickered across Heather's face at the mention of Victoria, a shared understanding, perhaps. Victoria Murray, 45, had been with the airline for 20 years and was known for her traditional approach to service. She and Heather had flown together for over a decade, and Victoria had been one of the few to openly support Heather's complaint about the promotion. "At least Victoria runs a proper service," Heather said, applying a final touch of powder to her nose. "Not like some of these younger leads who think we're here to be the passengers' best friends." Sophia said nothing, remembering the time she'd seen Victoria and Heather deliberately slow-walk service to a group of Middle Eastern businessmen, or the time they'd forgotten to offer meal choice to a Hispanic family in premium economy. "We should head to the gate," Sophia said instead, gathering her belongings. "Boarding starts in 30 minutes. "I'll meet you there," Heather replied. "I need to speak with Victoria first." As Sophia left the lounge, she couldn't shake the feeling that this flight would be different. Something in the air, perhaps, or something in Heather's eyes, sharper than usual, more brittle. She sent up a small prayer that the next few hours would pass without incident. She had no idea how spectacularly that prayer was about to be ignored. 15 miles away in a glass-walled conference room in downtown Chicago, Michael Phillips was concluding the most important meeting of the quarter. At 43, Michael had built Nexus Technologies from a startup in his garage to one of the most influential digital infrastructure companies in the country. His company provided the backbone for dozens of major corporations' digital operations, from banking to healthcare to transportation. "Gentlemen, ladies, I believe we've covered the essentials," Michael said, his deep voice carrying naturally across the table without needing to raise it. "The integration timeline is aggressive but achievable. My team will deliver as promised." Around the polished mahogany table sat the executive team of Trans Global Finance, one of the largest banking conglomerates in the Midwest. They were finalizing a $200 million contract for Nexus to overhaul their entire digital security infrastructure. "Your reputation precedes you," Phillips said, Walter Thornton, Trans Global's silver-haired CEO. "When Nexus takes on a project, it gets done right. That's why we're willing to sign today." Michael nodded, his expression serious, but his dark eyes warm with genuine appreciation. He was tall, with broad shoulders, and the build of someone who still found time for the gym despite an executive schedule. His charcoal suit was tailored perfectly to his frame, a subtle blue tie adding the only splash of color to his otherwise conservative appearance. "Trust is earned," Michael replied, a phrase that had become something of a mantra within Nexus. "And we earn it every day with every client on every project." As papers were signed and handshakes exchanged, Michael's assistant James Wilson appeared at the door, his expression apologetic but urgent. "Mr. Phillips, I'm sorry to interrupt. There's a call you need to take." Michael excused himself and stepped into the hallway. "What is it, James?" "It's about Zoe's flight. There was a booking issue with her special meal. The airline says they've corrected it, but I wanted to make sure you were aware." Michael checked his watch, a vintage Rolex that had been his father's, one of the few possessions the elder Phillips had been able to pass down. "Her flight boards in 20 minutes. Did you speak with the gate agent?" "Yes, sir. A woman named Lucia Mendez. She assured me that Zoe's information is now properly in the system, including her allergies. She'll personally escort Zoe onto the plane and brief the cabin crew." Michael nodded, tension easing slightly from his shoulders. "Thank you for handling this. What about my flight? Same aircraft, correct?" "Yes, sir. You're in first class on Skylight 847, departing at 1:15 p.m. If you leave now, you'll make it with time to spare." Michael glanced back at the conference room where the Trans Global team was gathering their materials. "The contract is signed. Make sure legal has everything they need, and I'll call in from New York tomorrow for the implementation kickoff." "Already arranged, sir. Your car is waiting downstairs." As they walked toward the elevator, Michael asked, "Which airline did you say Zoe is on again?" "Skylight Airways, sir. The same as yours." Michael's expression darkened momentarily. "Interesting coincidence. Did you know our infrastructure contract with Skylight is up for renewal next month? $350 million for their entire booking system, passenger management platform, and crew scheduling software." James nodded, pulling up the relevant file on his tablet. "Yes, sir. We have a preliminary meeting with their CTO next week to discuss terms. Move it up. I want to meet with them while I'm in New York, after I've had a chance to evaluate their service quality firsthand." "Absolutely, Mr. Phillips." As the elevator doors closed, Michael took out his phone and pulled up a photo of Zoe smiling broadly on her last birthday, her beaded braids catching the sunlight. A fierce protectiveness washed over him, as it always did when he thought of his daughter traveling alone. And James monitored Zoe's flight status continuously. "I want updates on any irregularities, no matter how small." "Of course." Michael slipped the phone back into his pocket, his mind already mapping contingencies. Most people saw only the successful CEO, the businessman whose digital empire connected millions. Few ever glimpsed the father who would move heaven and earth to protect his little girl. Fewer still understood how thoroughly Michael Phillips had learned to navigate a world that didn't always welcome him with open arms. 3 years ago, Heather Blackwell had been a different flight attendant. Not warm, perhaps warmth had never been her strong suit, but professional, efficient, even occasionally kind in her own reserved way. The change had been gradual, then sudden. Like water slowly rising against a dam until one tiny crack appears, and everything gives way at once. It wasn't just losing the promotion. It was what the loss represented, that her type of service, her understanding of professionalism, her entire approach to her career was being phased out. Younger flight attendants like Sophia and Diego focused on passenger experience and emotional intelligence rather than the strict adherence to protocol that Heather had built her identity around. Victoria Murray understood. They'd come up through the ranks together, had weathered the industry's changes side by side. They'd seen service standards relaxed, uniform requirements loosened, the crisp formality that once defined air travel, gradually replaced by a casual, customer-focused approach that felt foreign to them both. You can't fight the direction of the wind, Victoria had told her after the promotion debacle, but you can control your own vessel. And Heather had taken that advice to heart. She'd begun creating her own standards, her own metrics for which passengers deserved her best service. She'd begun keeping a mental tally which types of travelers were polite and which were demanding, which followed the rules and which expected exceptions, which spoke to her as an equal and which treated her as a servant. Patterns emerged in her mind. Convenient patterns that aligned with pre-existing notions she'd never fully acknowledged. 6 weeks ago, she'd encountered a black businessman who'd requested a different meal in business class, claiming his special order hadn't been recorded correctly. "I'm sorry, sir, but we only carry what's listed in the system," she'd informed him crisply, not offering alternatives. 20 minutes later, when a white woman made an identical request in the same cabin, Heather had found a solution, cobbling together components from different meal options to accommodate her. Diego had noticed. "We could have done the same for the gentleman in 4C, he'd pointed out quietly. "He was rude," Heather had replied dismissively. She asked nicely. Diego had given her a long look but said nothing more. The incident report he'd filed afterward had disappeared from the system within 48 hours, one of several that seemed to vanish after passing through Victoria's review. Small incidents accumulated. A Hispanic mother whose request for extra water for formula was treated as an imposition. A Middle Eastern student whose bag was scrutinized more thoroughly than others. An Asian family whose English Heather claimed not to understand, though they spoke with perfect clarity. Each time there was a justification. Each time there was a policy cited. Each time there was a subtle reinforcement of who belonged in which spaces, who deserved which levels of service. And each time the wall between Heather Blackwell and her humanity grew a little higher, a little thicker, a little more impenetrable. Michael Phillips boarded Skylight Flight 847 with the practiced efficiency of someone who flew weekly. He nodded politely to the flight attendants at the door, stowed his carry-on in the overhead bin, and settled into seat 1A without fuss or ceremony. Sophia Rodriguez approached with a warm smile. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Phillips. May I offer you a pre-departure beverage, water, please? No ice." "Certainly." She returned promptly with the water served in an actual glass rather than plastic. "Is this your final destination, or are you connecting in New York?" "Final destination." "Business." Sophia nodded, appreciating his directness. Some first-class passengers demanded conversation. Others preferred privacy. The good ones, like Michael, made their preferences clear without being rude. "If you need anything during the flight, please don't hesitate to ask. We'll be serving lunch about an hour after takeoff." Michael thanked her, then glanced toward the economy cabin. "Actually, I have a question. My daughter is on this flight, an unaccompanied minor. Would it be possible to check on her before takeoff?" Of course, sir. What's her name and seat number? Zoe Phillips, seat 14B. Sophia's expression brightened with recognition. Diego was just telling me about her. She's all settled in. Would you like to go back and see her yourself? We haven't completed boarding yet, so it's a good time. I'd appreciate that. Michael made his way down the aisle, moving with the careful precision of a tall man in a confined space. The economy cabin was beginning to fill, passengers struggling with bags and jostling for overhead bin space. He spotted Zoe immediately, her beaded braids catching the light as she gazed out the window. Something in his chest tightened. She looked so small in the big seat, her yellow dress bright against the navy blue upholstery. "Zoe Bear," he called softly as he approached. Her head whipped around her face, lighting up. "Daddy!" She nearly bounced out of her seat with excitement. Michael knelt in the aisle beside her. "Hey there, brave girl. Getting settled okay, uh-huh? Diego showed me how everything works. I have the special meal card right here." She proudly held up the orange card that flagged her allergy requirements. "Perfect. I'm just up front, okay, in the first-class cabin. I'll come check on you again when it's allowed." A sharp voice cut through their conversation. "Sir, you need to return to your assigned seat. We're completing the boarding process." Michael turned to see Heather Blackwell standing in the aisle, her expression stern. "I'm just checking on my daughter," Michael explained, gesturing to Zoe. "She's traveling as an unaccompanied minor." Heather's gaze flicked between them, something unreadable passing behind her eyes. "Our unaccompanied minor procedures are very specific, sir. All interactions must be supervised by crew members. Please return to your seat. We'll ensure the child is properly attended to." Michael noted the phrasing, "the child, not your daughter or even the girl," but chose not to comment. He squeezed Zoe's hand. "I'll see you later, Zoe Bear. Remember what we always say?" Zoe nodded, her voice a whisper meant just for him. "I belong everywhere I go. That's my girl." Michael stood his full height, bringing him eye to eye with Heather. "Thank you for your attention to the procedures. I'm sure my daughter is in good hands." Something in his tone, not confrontational, but certainly not deferential, caused Heather's posture to stiffen slightly. "First class is forward, sir." She gestured toward the front of the plane, as if he might have forgotten the way in the 30 seconds since he'd left his seat. Michael nodded once and made his way back to first class, making a mental note of Heather's name tag and the brittle quality of her professionalism. As he settled back into 1A, he glanced at Sophia, who had witnessed the exchange from the galley. "Is there something I should know about the cabin crew assigned to my daughter's section?" he asked quietly. Sophia hesitated, professionalism warring with honesty. "Diego Alvarez is excellent with children, sir. He's been briefed on your daughter's needs." What she didn't say spoke volumes. Michael nodded his understanding. "Thank you, Sophia. I appreciate your candor." As the final passengers boarded and the cabin doors closed, Michael sent a quick text to James Flight 847, boarding complete. "Keep monitoring. Something feels off about one of the attendants. Phillips H. Will update." Then he turned off his phone, buckled his seatbelt, and prepared for takeoff. His mind equally divided between the transglobal contract he'd just secured and the precious cargo sitting 20 rows behind him. The Boeing 737 lifted off smoothly from O'Hare, climbing through patches of cloud into clear blue skies. The captain's voice came over the intercom, announcing their flight time of 2 hours and 15 minutes to New York JFK, and promising smooth conditions for most of the journey. In seat 14B, Zoe Phillips pressed her face against the small oval window, watching Chicago shrink beneath them until the skyscrapers looked like toys and the vast blue expanse of Lake Michigan stretched to the horizon. She'd flown before, of course, but always with a parent beside her. The experience felt different alone, both more frightening and somehow more magical. As the seatbelt sign dinged off, she felt the weight of her compass in her cardigan pocket, a small reminder of her father's presence, even when she couldn't see him. The cabin hummed with the white noise of engines and air circulation punctuated by occasional laughter. Crying babies and the rhythmic squeak of the beverage cart making its first pass through first class. First time flying alone, Zoe turned to find an elderly woman with silver-streaked black hair and kind eyes studying her from the aisle seat. Her accent was warm and melodic, hinting at Spanish as her first language. "Yes, ma'am," Zoe replied politely the way her parents had taught her to address adults. "I'm Mrs. Garcia," the woman said, offering a smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "I've been flying for over 50 years and I still think it's a miracle every time this big metal tube gets off the ground." Despite her nervousness, Zoe couldn't help but smile back. "I'm Zoe Phillips. Very nice to meet you, Miss Zoe Phillips. Are you visiting family in New York?" "My dad, he lives there for work. He's actually on this plane too, but in first class." Mrs. Garcia's eyebrows rose slightly. "Is that so? Well, isn't that wonderful? So you're not really alone after all." Something about the woman's gentle presence made Zoe feel safer. "Do you live in New York?" "I do. I visit my sister in Chicago every few months. She's too stubborn to move to New York, and I'm too stubborn to move to Chicago." Mrs. Garcia chuckled. "So we compromise with visits." Their conversation was interrupted by Diego approaching with a tablet in hand. "Hello again, Zoe. I see you've met Mrs. Garcia. She's one of our most frequent flyers." Mrs. Garcia waved away the compliment. "Only because my sister refuses to use FaceTime properly." Diego laughed, then turned his attention to Zoe. "I'm just checking in to make sure you're comfortable. Your special meal is all set for when we begin lunch service in about 30 minutes. Is there anything you need in the meantime?" "No, thank you," Zoe replied, feeling more at ease with Diego's friendly demeanor. "Great. If you need anything, just press the call button. I'll be back to check on you regularly." He gave Mrs. Garcia a respectful nod before continuing his rounds. In first class, Michael observed the impeccable service with the critical eye of someone who built systems for a living. Sophia and another attendant, whose name badge read Amanda, moved with practiced efficiency, delivering drinks and warm towels with genuine smiles. When Sophia passed by his seat, Michael asked quietly, "How is the service in economy progressing?" Understanding immediately dawned in her eyes. "Diego is conducting his check-ins with all special assistance passengers, including your daughter, sir. The meal service will begin shortly, starting from the front of economy." "Thank you." Michael sipped his water, noting the time. Precisely on schedule, Sophia began preparing the first-class meal service, a choreographed routine of tablecloths, appetizers, and wine offerings. Meanwhile, in the economy galley, Diego was carefully reviewing the special meal orders on his tablet. "We have 7 special meals," he informed Heather and Victoria as they prepared the carts. 2 vegetarian, 1 kosher, 1 gluten-free, and 3 allergy-related, including the unaccompanied minor in 14B. "Her meal is specially tagged, no peanuts, no shellfish." Victoria nodded briskly. "I'll handle the special meals. Heather, you take the first cart with the regular options. Diego, you handle beverages." "Actually," Diego interjected carefully, "since I've already checked in with the UM in 14B, maybe I should deliver her meal just for continuity." Heather's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "We follow standard service protocol Alvarez, front to back, section by section. Victoria will handle the special meals as lead." Diego hesitated, then nodded. "Of course. I just thought." "Less thinking, more working?" Victoria cut him off. "We have a full flight to feed." The service began smoothly enough. Diego maneuvered the beverage cart down the narrow aisle, offering drinks with a smile. Heather followed with meal options, her service technically perfect, if somewhat cold. Victoria prepared the special meals in the galley, placing each one on a tray with its corresponding allergy or dietary card. When Victoria brought Zoe's special meal to the cart, she placed it carefully on the lower shelf. Seat 14B allergy meal for the unaccompanied minor. No peanuts, no shellfish. "I'll make sure she gets it," Heather replied, not looking up from arranging the regular meal trays. As the meal service progressed toward the middle of the cabin, Zoe began to feel hungry. She watched as passengers in the rows ahead received their meals, the aroma of hot food making her stomach growl audibly. "Won't be long now," Mrs. Garcia reassured her. When Heather's cart finally reached row 14, she served the passenger in 14A efficiently, then paused at Zoe's seat. "I have a special meal request for this seat," Zoe said, holding up her orange allergy card that Diego had given her earlier. Heather's eyes flicked to the card, then to Zoe, then back to the cart. "I don't see any special meals left on my cart." "But Diego said it was ready." Zoe's voice wavered slightly. "I'm allergic to peanuts and shellfish." Heather's expression didn't change. "If it's not on my cart, then it wasn't prepared. I can offer you the pasta option from the regular menu." "I can't eat that," Zoe explained, her voice small but clear. "My doctor said I have to be careful because some sauces have peanuts." Mrs. Garcia leaned forward. "The young lady has a medical condition. Surely there must be a mistake. Can you check with your colleagues?" Something shifted in Heather's expression, a hardening, a withdrawal. "I'm in the middle of service, ma'am. I can't abandon my cart to track down a meal that was likely never prepared." But Diego said Zoe began. "Children often misunderstand," Heather cut her off. "I'll continue with service and circle back if time permits." Mrs. Garcia's spine straightened. "Now see here." But Heather had already moved to 14C, effectively dismissing both Zoe and Mrs. Garcia's concerns. Zoe felt a lump forming in her throat, her eyes beginning to sting with the threat of tears. She clutched her compass in her pocket, trying to draw strength from it. "Don't you worry, child," Mrs. Garcia whispered. "I'll make sure this gets fixed." The elderly woman pressed her call button. After a moment, Diego appeared, his smile fading as he took in the situation. Zoe without a meal, Mrs. Garcia bristling with indignation. "Is everything all right?" he asked. "This young lady hasn't received her special meal," Mrs. Garcia explained. "Ms. Blackwell said it wasn't on the cart." Diego frowned. "That's strange. I personally saw it prepared and placed on the cart. Let me check the galley." He hurried away, returning minutes later with a covered tray. "Here we go, Zoe. Your special meal just as promised." Relief washed over Zoe's face. "Thank you, Diego. You're welcome. I'm sorry for the confusion." As Diego set the tray on Zoe's table, Heather returned, her eyes narrowing at the scene. "Alvarez, you're disrupting my service pattern," she said, voice clipped. "Just delivering a missing special meal," Diego replied evenly. "That meal wasn't authorized for distribution yet. I was going to circle back after completing the main service." Diego's expression betrayed momentary confusion, but it was prepared and marked for 14B. There was no reason to withhold it. "You know very well that we serve front-to-back special meals included," Heather insisted. "You've created an exception that disrupts the entire service." "She's a child with food allergies," Diego said quietly. "Exceptions are permitted for medical needs." Heather's jaw tightened. Without another word, she reached over and took the still-covered meal from Zoe's tray table. "What are you doing?" Mrs. Garcia demanded. "Maintaining proper service protocol," Heather replied coldly. "The unaccompanied minor will receive her meal when her row is properly served, just like everyone else." Zoe's eyes widened, tears now spilling onto her cheeks. "But I'm hungry." And Diego said, "Children from your background always expect special treatment." Heather snapped loud enough that several nearby passengers looked up. "Well, not on my flight. Back to your seat." "You'll eat when I decide you can eat." The cabin went suddenly uncomfortably quiet. Several passengers exchanged shocked glances. A woman across the aisle had begun filming discreetly with her phone. Mrs. Garcia rose to her feet, her voice trembling with outrage. "How dare you? This child has done nothing wrong." "Ma'am, please remain seated during meal service," Heather replied automatically. I will not sit down while you mistreat this child. She has allergies. She needs her special meal. Diego stepped forward, trying to defuse the situation. Heather, please. Let's just give Zoe her meal and continue with service. Heather turned on him, eyes flashing. When did you become lead on this flight? Alvarez, get back to your beverage service. Now. Victoria appeared, then drawn by the commotion. What's going on here? Alvarez is undermining my service authority, Heather reported, creating exceptions without authorization. Victoria assessed the situation with a quick glance, taking in Zoe's tears, Mrs. Garcia's indignation, and the growing attention from surrounding passengers. Diego, return to your assigned duties, Victoria said firmly. Heather, continue with your service pattern. I'll handle this situation. The child needs her meal. Diego protested. It's a documented medical requirement. That's for me to determine. Victoria replied coolly. Return to your station. Diego hesitated clearly, torn between following orders and doing what he knew was right. Finally, with an apologetic glance at Zoe, he retreated toward the galley. Victoria turned to Zoe and Mrs. Garcia. I'll review the situation and make a determination regarding the special meal request. In the meantime, please remain in your seats and refrain from disrupting the service further. This is outrageous, Mrs. Garcia declared. The child has an allergy card right there. What is there to review? Victoria ignored her, turning to follow Diego to the galley. Heather, with one last dismissive glance at Zoe, continued her meal service to the next row. In the first-class cabin, Sophia was alerted to the situation by Amanda, who had overheard passengers discussing the commotion in economy. There's an issue with the child's meal, Amanda whispered. The unaccompanied minor in 14B. Sophia's eyes widened. Mr. Phillips' daughter, Amanda, nodded. Apparently, Heather took her meal away. Sophia's professional demeanor cracked slightly. She did what? That's what the passengers are saying. Something about service protocol. Sophia glanced toward Michael Phillips, currently focused on his laptop while enjoying his first-class meal. A sense of dread settled in her stomach. I need to check on this, she decided. Can you cover first class for a moment? Of course. Sophia made her way to economy, where she found Victoria and Diego in a heated, whispered argument in the galley. You can't deny a child with documented allergies her special meal, Diego was insisting. It's not just unprofessional, it's dangerous. The issue isn't the meal, Victoria replied tersely. It's the disruption of service procedures. Heather has every right to maintain her service flow. What's happening? Sophia interrupted. Both turned Victoria with annoyance, Diego with relief. The UM in 14B hasn't received her special meal, Diego explained quickly. Heather took it away, claiming I was disrupting service protocol by delivering it out of sequence. The child with allergies. Mr. Phillips's daughter, Sophia, clarified, alarm growing. Victoria's expression changed subtly at the name Phillips. Mr. Phillips, as in the first-class passenger. Yes, he's the girl's father, Sophia confirmed. He specifically asked about her welfare earlier. Victoria and Diego exchanged glances. Victoria's considerably more concerned than before. I wasn't aware of the connection, Victoria said, her tone moderating. Perhaps in this case, an exception. But it was too late. From the cabin came the distinct sound of raised voices. All three rushed to the aisle to find a scene unfolding that would change the course of their careers. Heather had returned to row 14 this time with a water bottle that she placed on Zoe's tray table. Since you can't have the regular meal options, you'll have to make do with this until we can sort out your special request, she said, her tone making it clear that sorting out was a low priority. But Diego already brought my special meal, Zoe said, her voice wobbling but determined. You took it away. I've explained the service procedure, Heather replied coldly. The fact that you're traveling alone doesn't entitle you to special treatment. Mrs. Garcia had had enough. This is discrimination. Plain and simple. Ma'am, please lower your voice, Heather warned. I will not. This child has been nothing but polite. She has a medical need, and you're treating her like she's done something wrong. Other passengers had begun to chime in. Yeah, just give the kid her meal. What's the big deal? She's just a little girl. I'm recording this. This isn't right. Heather's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. All of you need to settle down. I am following company procedures. No, you're not. Diego interjected, stepping forward from the galley. Skylight procedure specifically states that passengers with documented medical dietary needs receive priority meal service regardless of cabin position. Stay out of this, Alvarez Heather hissed, but Diego stood his ground. I'm getting Zoe's meal from the galley. Now! As he turned to go, Heather grabbed his arm. Don't you dare undermine me. The confrontation had escalated beyond professional disagreement into public spectacle. Passengers throughout the economy cabin were watching many filming with their phones. And then, cutting through the tension like a knife, came a calm, authoritative voice from the front of the economy section. Excuse me, I believe there's a problem with my daughter's meal. All eyes turned to see Michael Phillips standing in the aisle, his expression composed but his eyes taking in every detail of the scene. Sir, please return to your seat, Victoria said, stepping forward. We're handling a service issue. Michael's gaze moved from Victoria to Heather to Zoe, who sat with tears streaming down her face. Zoe, Bear, are you okay? He asked, his voice gentle despite the tension radiating from his posture. Zoe sniffled. They took away my special meal, Daddy. Diego brought it, but then she took it away. Michael's attention shifted to Heather, his expression hardening. You denied my daughter her meal. The one specifically prepared for her documented allergies. Heather, realizing she was now facing an adult rather than a child, adjusted her approach. Sir, we have specific service procedures. Answer the question. Michael interrupted, his voice still even, but carrying an unmistakable edge. Did you take away my daughter's medically necessary meal? Heather faltered, then recovered. The meal was brought out of sequence. I was simply maintaining proper service flow. So that's a yes. Michael's gaze was unwavering. And did you tell my 9-year-old daughter that children from her background always expect special treatment? The cabin had gone completely silent. Even the ambient noise of the engines seemed to fade as every passenger waited for Heather's response. Sir, you're misunderstanding. I don't believe I am. Michael turned to Mrs. Garcia. Ma'am, you were sitting next to my daughter. Did this flight attendant refuse to serve her meal and make that statement? Mrs. Garcia nodded firmly. Yes, she did. Exactly those words. I have never seen such treatment of a child in all my years of flying. Michael turned back to Heather. Thank you for the clarification. Now I'd like to speak with the lead flight attendant immediately. Victoria stepped forward, her expression a careful mask of professional concern. I'm Victoria Murray, the lead on this flight. Sir, I assure you we take these matters very seriously. Do you? Michael asked. Because from where I'm standing it appears that you've allowed a member of your crew to discriminate against my daughter, deny her medically necessary food, and cause her public distress. Is that taking things seriously in your view? Victoria's professional veneer cracked slightly. Sir, there seems to have been a miscommunication. There was no miscommunication. Diego interrupted, unable to remain silent. I personally prepared Zoe's meal according to her allergy card. I personally brought it to her seat. Ms. Blackwell personally removed it, citing protocol. There's nothing to miscommunicate. Victoria shot Diego a warning look, which he ignored. And when I attempted to address the situation, Diego continued. I was ordered back to my station. Michael nodded once, processing this information. I see. And you are Diego Alvarez, sir, flight attendant. Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Alvarez. Michael turned back to Victoria. I'd like my daughter's meal brought to her immediately. Then I'd like your full names, employee IDs, and the name and contact information of your immediate supervisor. Sir, perhaps we can discuss this privately, Victoria began. There's nothing to discuss? Privately, Michael replied. My daughter was publicly mistreated. The resolution will be equally public. The standoff continued for a tense moment until Sophia stepped forward with a covered tray. Zoe's meal as requested, she said, placing it gently on the girl's tray table. I'm so sorry for the confusion and distress, Mr. Phillips. Thank you, Michael said, his tone softening slightly. And your name, Sophia Rodriguez, sir. Michael made a mental note, then turned to Zoe. Is this the right meal, Zoe Bear? The one for your allergies? Zoe nodded, wiping away tears with the back of her hand. Yes, Daddy. Good. Enjoy your lunch. I'll be right back to check on you. With a reassuring squeeze of her shoulder, Michael turned back to Victoria. I'd like those names and contact information now, please. Recognizing the immovability in his tone, Victoria reluctantly provided the requested details, which Michael entered into his phone with deliberate precision. Thank you. I'll be returning to my seat now. I expect there will be no further issues with my daughter's care for the remainder of this flight. Is that clear? Victoria nodded stiffly. Perfectly, sir. As Michael made his way back to first class, Heather stood frozen, the full impact of what had just transpired beginning to dawn on her. She had just publicly discriminated against the daughter of a first-class passenger, a passenger who carried himself with the unmistakable authority of someone significant. What she didn't know yet, what none of them knew, was exactly how significant Michael Phillips was to Skylight Airways. But they were about to find out. As Michael Phillips made his way back to his first-class seat, the atmosphere in the economy cabin crackled with tension. Passengers who had witnessed the confrontation exchanged meaningful glances, some still recording discreetly with their phones. One woman was already typing furiously on her tablet the words "Skylight discrimination" visible on her screen. Michael moved with measured precision, his expression betraying nothing of the calculated anger building within him. As he settled back into seat 1A, Sophia approached cautiously. Mr. Phillips, I want to personally apologize for what happened. That's not who we are as a company. Michael regarded her thoughtfully. Isn't it, though, I've found that how an organization treats its most vulnerable customers like an unaccompanied 9-year-old reveals exactly who they are? Sophia's professional composure wavered momentarily. Some of us try to do better, she said quietly. And some of you stood by while my daughter was mistreated, Michael replied, not unkindly but firmly. Systems are only as good as the people who operate them, Ms. Rodriguez, and the people who oversee them. He took out his phone flight mode, disabled despite regulations, and sent a brief message to James Wilson incident with Zoe on flight. Need full documentation. Access cabin recording system remotely. Authorization code Phillips Alpha 9. Time marker approximately 25 minutes ago, economy section, row 14. Also contact Thomas Bennett directly. Meeting needed upon landing. Sophia, observing the phone usage but choosing not to comment, asked, Is there anything else I can get for you, sir? Yes. A pen and paper, please. While Sophia retrieved the items, Michael opened his laptop and accessed a secure server through the plane's Wi-Fi. A few keystrokes brought up a detailed file on Skylight Airways financial statements, organizational charts, contract terms, and a comprehensive breakdown of the digital infrastructure his company had built for them over the past 5 years. Sophia returned with a leather portfolio containing Skylight letterhead and a sleek pen. Here you are, Mr. Phillips. Again, I'm truly sorry about what happened. Thank you, Sophia. Not everyone would have had the courage to step in the way you did. She nodded once, appreciating the acknowledgement, then retreated to give him privacy. Michael began writing, his handwriting precise and deliberate. The note was addressed to Thomas Bennett, CEO of Skylight Airways, outlining the incident in clear, factual terms. No emotional language, no threats, just a detailed account, followed by specific expectations for resolution. Meanwhile, in the economy cabin, the aftermath of the confrontation continued to unfold. Diego had taken over service in Zoe's section, making sure she had everything she needed while Heather had been reassigned to the galley away from passengers. Victoria hovered nearby, her usual confidence, shaken by the recognition that this was no ordinary customer complaint. Something in Michael Phillips's demeanor, in the way the other crew members deferred to him, in the fact that he'd disabled his phone's flight mode without concern for regulations, all suggested he wielded influence beyond that of a typical angry parent. "Who is he?" she whispered to Sophia when the first-class attendant came to the galley to restock supplies. Sophia hesitated, then replied simply, "Someone who can make decisions that affect all of us." "What does that mean?" Victoria pressed. "It means Heather just picked the wrong child to mistreat." Sophia answered, gathering a fresh pot of coffee before returning to first class. Zoe had finally stopped crying, taking small bites of her meal under Mrs. Garcia's gentle encouragement. "You're being very brave," Mrs. Garcia told her. "Many adults wouldn't have handled that situation with as much dignity as you did." Zoe glanced up, her eyes still red-rimmed but her composure returning. "My dad says dignity isn't something anyone can take from you, only something you can give away." Mrs. Garcia smiled warmly. "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He is," Zoe agreed, turning the small compass over in her palm. "He gave me this so I'd always know which way is home. But I think it's also to remind me that I always know which way is right." Back in the first-class cabin, Michael had completed his note and was now methodically documenting every aspect of the incident, creating a timeline with precise details. He recorded names, statements, and actions, cross-referencing them with the times logged in his text messages to James. A new message from James appeared on his screen. "Accessing recording now. Initial review confirms incident as described. Legal team alerted. Thomas Bennett's office confirms he will meet you at JFK upon arrival. Gate changed to private reception area near Terminal 4. Michael sent a brief acknowledgement, then continued with his documentation. His anger had crystallized into something colder, more focused, a determination to ensure that what happened to Zoe would have consequences beyond this single flight. As the plane began its initial descent into New York, Diego made his way to row 14, kneeling beside Zoe's seat. "We'll be landing soon," he said gently. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Zoe replied. "Thank you for trying to help me." Diego smiled, though there was sadness behind his eyes. "That's my job, Zoe. It's what all of us should do." He hesitated, then added, "I want to apologize for what happened. It wasn't right. It wasn't your fault," Zoe assured him with a wisdom beyond her years. Mrs. Garcia nodded in agreement. "Indeed. Young man, you were the only one who stood up for her at first. That takes character." Diego thanked them both, then lowered his voice. "Zoe, your father seems like an important man. May I ask what he does?" Zoe considered the question. "He builds systems that connect people. That's how he explains it. His company is called Nexus Technologies." Diego's eyes widened slightly with recognition. "Nexus. Of course. That makes sense now." "Why?" Zoe asked curiously. Diego chose his words carefully. "Let's just say your dad's work is very important to companies like Skylight. Now let me check your seatbelt before we begin our descent." As he moved away to check other passengers, Diego caught Sophia's eye from across the cabin. They exchanged a knowing look, both recognizing that they were witnessing the prelude to significant change. The captain's voice came over the intercom, announcing their final approach to JFK International Airport. Passengers began stowing their belongings and returning their seats to the upright position. In the galley, Victoria was having an intense, whispered conversation with Heather. "Do you have any idea who that is?" Victoria hissed. "Some executive who thinks the rules don't apply to his family," Heather replied defensively, though her usual confidence had clearly been shaken. "That's Michael Phillips, CEO of Nexus Technologies." Heather stared blankly. "For God's sake." "Heather, they provide our entire digital infrastructure, booking systems, crew, scheduling, passenger management, everything. Their contract with us is worth hundreds of millions." The color drained from Heather's face as the implications began to sink in. "I was just following service protocol." "No, you weren't." Victoria cut her off. "You were being vindictive to a child because she received attention you didn't control. I defended you because we've worked together for years, but even I can see this was indefensible." "What's going to happen?" Heather asked, her voice suddenly small. "I don't know," Victoria admitted. "But whatever it is, it's already in motion." As the aircraft touched down on the runway at JFK, a series of text messages activated a protocol that few at Skylight even knew existed. In the executive offices at the airline's headquarters, Thomas Bennett was already in crisis mode. His team assembled to address what internal communications were describing as a high-priority customer incident with potential contractual implications. The plane taxied to the gate, and the captain's voice announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to John F. Kennedy International Airport. Local time is 3:42 p.m., and the temperature is 68 degrees. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until the aircraft comes to a complete stop and the seatbelt sign has been turned off. At this time, we'd like to ask that all passengers remain seated upon arrival to allow a special assistance passenger to deplane first. Thank you for flying with Skylight Airways." Michael gathered his belongings, then made his way back to row 14 where Zoe was waiting with Mrs. Garcia. "Ready to go, Zoe Bear?" he asked, his demeanor noticeably softer when addressing his daughter. Zoe nodded, collecting her backpack. "Can Mrs. Garcia come with us? She was really nice to me." Michael turned to the elderly woman with genuine gratitude. "We'd be honored if you'd accompany us, ma'am. I'd like to thank you properly for looking out for my daughter, Mrs." Garcia smiled. "It was nothing, Mr. Phillips. Any decent person would have done the same. Unfortunately, that wasn't my daughter's experience today," Michael replied, "which makes your kindness all the more valuable." As they prepared to exit, Diego approached. "Mr. Phillips, I just wanted to say I know exactly what you did and didn't do today." "Mr. Alvarez?" Michael interrupted, his tone measured. "And I'll make sure the right people know as well." Diego nodded, understanding the dual meaning in Michael's words. The trio made their way to the front of the aircraft where Victoria and Heather stood at the exit. Victoria managed a professional smile. "Thank you for flying with Skylight Airways, Mr. Phillips. Again, I want to express our deepest apologies for any inconvenience." "Inconvenience?" Michael repeated, his voice quiet but carrying such authority that Victoria immediately fell silent. "Is that what you call what happened today? An inconvenience?" He turned to Heather, who seemed to shrink under his gaze. "Ms. Blackwell, I'd like you to look at my daughter and explain why you thought it appropriate to deny her food because of who she is." Heather's face flushed. "Sir, it wasn't about that's not what." "Choose your words carefully," Michael advised. "Because they're likely to be the last official ones you speak as a Skylight employee." Before Heather could respond, a man in an impeccable suit appeared at the aircraft door. "Mr. Phillips, I'm Robert Keller, Vice President of Customer Experience for Skylight. Mr. Bennett sent me to escort you and your daughter to the private reception area." Michael nodded once. "Mrs. Garcia will be joining us." Of course, sir. Right this way. As they exited the aircraft, Michael paused one last time, turning to Sophia, who stood nearby. Ms. Rodriguez, I'll be requesting your presence at the meeting as well. Mr. Alvarez, too. Please inform him. Yes, sir, Sophia replied, relief evident in her expression. Michael, Zoe, and Mrs. Garcia followed Robert Keller down the jet bridge toward a future that would reshape not just their lives, but the culture of an entire corporation. In the aircraft, as regular passengers began to deplane, Heather turned to Victoria, her face pale with the realization of what was coming. "What have I done?" she whispered. Victoria had no answer to give. The private reception area near Terminal 4 was designed for high-value customers and diplomatic visitors, all soft lighting, comfortable seating, and discreet security. As Michael entered with Zoe and Mrs. Garcia, they were met by a phalanx of Skyalite executives led by Thomas Bennett himself, a silver-haired man with the practiced smile of someone who'd navigated countless corporate crises. Mr. Phillips Bennett extended his hand. "I cannot express how deeply concerned we are about what occurred on today's flight. Please make yourselves comfortable. Can we offer you anything? Water, coffee. Perhaps some ice cream for your daughter?" Michael didn't take the offered hand. "My daughter has already been denied food once today on your airline, Mr. Bennett. I think what she needs now is to see that actions have consequences." Bennett's smile faltered. "Of course, you're absolutely right." He gestured to the seating area where several other executives waited tensely. "Shall we discuss this privately?" "There's nothing private about discrimination, Mr. Bennett. It happens in public, and the accountability should be equally public." At that moment, Diego and Sophia were escorted into the room by Robert Keller. They stood awkwardly to the side, uncertain of their role in the unfolding drama. "Ah, good," Michael said. "Mr. Alvarez, Ms. Rodriguez, please join us. Your perspectives will be valuable." As everyone settled into seats with Zoe sitting close to her father and Mrs. Garcia on her other side, the door opened once more. Victoria and Heather entered, both looking significantly less confident than they had on the aircraft. Behind them came James Wilson, Michael's assistant, carrying a tablet and a small portable speaker. Perfect timing, Michael noted. Now we're all here. "Mr. Bennett, I believe you've been briefed on what happened on Flight 847 today." Bennett nodded, his expression grave. "I've received a preliminary report, yes. And let me say immediately that what Ms. Blackwell is alleged to have done? Not alleged," Michael corrected. "Documented." He nodded to James, who placed the speaker on the table and pressed a button on his tablet. The room filled with crystal-clear audio from the aircraft. "Children from your background always expect special treatment. Well, not on my flight. Back to your seat. You'll eat when I decide you can eat." Zoe's small voice. "But Diego already brought my special meal. You took it away." Heather's cold reply. "I've explained the service procedure. The fact that you're traveling alone doesn't entitle you to special treatment." Mrs. Garcia's indignation. "This is discrimination, plain and simple." The recording continued, capturing the entire incident in damning detail. Heather's face had gone completely white while Victoria stared at the floor. Bennett and his executives exchanged alarmed glances. When the recording ended, Michael spoke into the silence. "That's from your own cabin monitoring system, Mr. Bennett. The same system my company designed and implemented for Skyalite 5 years ago. It captures audio from every zone of the aircraft for security purposes." Bennett cleared his throat. "Mr. Phillips, clearly what happened is inexcusable. Ms. Blackwell's behavior was completely contrary to our company values and training." "Was it?" Michael interrupted. "Because this isn't an isolated incident." He turned to James, who handed him a folder. "This contains documented complaints about Ms. Blackwell stretching back 18 months. Complaints that were filed and subsequently buried or dismissed." He passed the folder to Bennett, who opened it with visible trepidation. "You'll notice a pattern in who filed these complaints and how they were handled," Michael continued. "Ms. Blackwell has been selectively discriminating against passengers of color, particularly women and children, for quite some time, and Ms. Murray has been protecting her." Victoria's head snapped up. "That's not true. I would never." "The documentation suggests otherwise," Michael replied calmly. "Every incident report filed against Ms. Blackwell that mentioned potential discrimination was reviewed and dismissed by you, Ms. Murray, including 3 filed by Mr. Alvarez." All eyes turned to Diego, who nodded solemnly. "I filed reports after witnessing similar incidents. They disappeared from the system within days." Bennett was now flipping through the documents with increasing alarm. "Mr. Phillips, I assure you if this is accurate, it represents a serious breach of our policies and values. Skylight Airways does not tolerate discrimination in any form, and yet it has flourished under your leadership," Michael observed. "The question now is, what are you going to do about it?" Bennett straightened, recognizing that this was no ordinary customer complaint to be smoothed over with platitudes and vouchers. This was an existential threat to both his company's reputation and its operational capacity, given Nexus Technologies' role in their digital infrastructure. "Ms. Blackwell's employment will be terminated immediately," Bennett stated firmly. "Ms. Murray will be suspended pending a full investigation. We'll conduct a comprehensive review of our complaint procedures and crew training with particular focus on bias prevention and accountability." "Not good enough," Michael replied, his voice still calm but brooking no argument. I'm sorry," Bennett faltered. "Tell me, Mr. Bennett, what's the value of Skylight's contract with Nexus Technologies?" The question hung in the air, its implications clear to everyone in the room. $350 million over 5 years? Bennett answered, tension evident in his voice. "Renewable next month. And what would happen to Skylight's operations if those systems went offline?" "Even temporarily," Bennett paled. "It would be catastrophic. Our entire booking platform crew, scheduling, maintenance, tracking, everything runs on Nexus infrastructure." Michael nodded. "So you understand the leverage I have in this situation." "But this isn't about leverage, Mr. Bennett. It's about transforming a culture that allowed my 9-year-old daughter to be publicly humiliated because of how she looks." He leaned forward slightly. "Here's what's going to happen. Yes, Miss Blackwell's employment ends today. Yes, Ms. Murray will face appropriate consequences for her enabling behavior. But more importantly, Skylight Airways is going to implement a completely new protocol for unaccompanied minors, one that includes comprehensive anti-bias training for all customer-facing staff, zero-tolerance policies for discrimination, and transparent accountability mechanisms." Bennett nodded quickly. "We can certainly develop such a protocol." "It's already developed," Michael interrupted, handing over another document. "The Zoe Protocol, named after my daughter whose dignity your employee tried to strip away today." Bennett accepted the document, scanning its contents with visible surprise. "This is remarkably comprehensive. How did you produce this so quickly? Because the ideas in it aren't new, Mr. Bennett. They're the same recommendations that advocacy groups have been making to your industry for years, recommendations that have been consistently ignored because implementing them wasn't seen as profitable or necessary." Michael gestured to Zoe, who sat quietly observing the proceedings with remarkable composure for a child her age. "My daughter's experience today proves just how necessary they are." Bennett looked genuinely contrite as he addressed Zoe directly. "Young lady, on behalf of Skylight Airways, I want to offer you our most sincere apology. What happened to you today should never happen to any child or any person on any of our flights." Zoe regarded him solemnly. "Are you going to make sure it doesn't happen to other kids?" "Yes," Bennett promised. We absolutely are. Zoe nodded, satisfied with his answer in a way that the adult's corporate maneuvering hadn't achieved. Michael returned his attention to Bennett. The Zoe protocol will be implemented across all Skylight operations within 30 days. I'll provide technical support from Nexus at no additional cost to integrate it into your existing systems. In return, our contract renewal will include specific performance metrics related to discrimination complaints and resolution with substantial financial penalties for non-compliance. Bennett recognized a non-negotiable position when he heard one. Agreed. We'll begin implementation immediately. Good. Now, Michael turned to face Heather directly for the first time in the meeting. Ms. Blackwell, do you have anything to say to my daughter Heather, who had remained silent throughout the proceedings? Looked like she'd aged years in the past hour. Her perfect appearance had crumbled, makeup smudged from nervous perspiration hair, coming loose from its tight bun, hands trembling slightly as all eyes turned to her. She began, then faltered. I was just following what I thought was protocol. I didn't mean to stop, Michael said quietly but firmly. That's not an apology. That's a justification. Heather swallowed hard, then turned to Zoe. I'm sorry, she said, her voice barely audible. I treated you unfairly. There's no excuse for it. Zoe studied her for a long moment, then simply nodded once in acknowledgement. Ms. Blackwell, Robert Keller spoke up. Please surrender your company identification and electronics. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings, after which you'll be escorted from the premises. Your final paperwork will be sent to you within 48 hours. Heather removed her name badge and company phone with shaking hands, placing them on the table before being led away by a security officer. The room seemed to exhale collectively after her departure. Michael turned to Diego and Sofia. Mr. Alvarez, Ms. Rodriguez, I want to personally thank you for your efforts to protect my daughter today. Your actions represent the best of what customer service should be. Just doing our job, sir, Diego replied modestly. No, Michael corrected him. You were doing what was right, even when it wasn't easy. That's character, not just job performance. He turned to Bennett. I'm formally recommending both of them for promotion within your organization. Mr. Alvarez clearly has the judgment and integrity to serve in a leadership capacity, and Ms. Rodriguez demonstrated similar qualities. They should be part of implementing the Zoe protocol. Bennett nodded quickly. Consider it done. Finally, Michael turned to Mrs. Garcia, his expression softening. And to you, ma'am, I owe a personal debt of gratitude. You stood up for my daughter when I couldn't be there. You showed her that, even when faced with injustice, she wasn't alone. Mrs. Garcia patted his hand. Any grandmother would have done the same. I'm just glad I was there. I'd like to offer you lifetime premium status on any flights you take between New York and Chicago. To visit your sister, Michael said. It's a small token compared to what you did for Zoe today. Mrs. Garcia smiled warmly. That's very generous. My sister will be thrilled. She's always telling me I should travel in more style at my age. The meeting concluded with formal handshakes and commitments from Bennett to follow up with detailed implementation plans for the Zoe protocol. As they prepared to leave, Zoe tugged on her father's sleeve. Daddy, can Mrs. Garcia come home with us for dinner? I want to show her my rock collection. Michael smiled, the first genuine smile he'd shown since the incident on the plane. That's a wonderful idea if Mrs. Garcia would like to join us. I'd be delighted, Mrs. Garcia replied. I have quite a collection of interesting stones myself from my travels. As they left the reception area, Zoe, walking between her father and her new friend Michael, reflected on the day's events. What had begun as a traumatic experience for his daughter had transformed into something powerful, the creation of a protocol that would protect countless children in the future. He looked down at Zoe, resilient and compassionate, despite what she'd endured, and felt a surge of pride that overwhelmed even his anger at how she'd been treated. In standing up for herself and now for others, she'd embodied everything he'd tried to teach her. She belonged everywhere she went, and now, thanks to the Zoe protocol, other children would know they belonged too. News of the incident aboard Flight 847 spread quickly. By the time Michael and Zoe arrived at their Manhattan apartment with Mrs. Garcia, the first social media posts were already gaining traction. A passenger's shaky video had been uploaded to Twitter with the caption, "Skyalite flight attendant denies food to black child with allergies. CEO dad steps in. Stash flying while." Black. Zoe. Deserves better. The video had accumulated 10,000 views within the first hour. Michael had arranged for dinner to be delivered from Zoe's favorite Italian restaurant. As Mrs. Garcia, whose first name they learned was Elena, admired Zoe's carefully labeled rock collection in the living room. Michael stepped onto the balcony to take a call from James. The story's gaining momentum, James reported. Major travel blogs have picked it up, and we've had inquiries from 3 network news programs. Skyalite's stock is already down 2% in after-hours trading. And internally, Michael asked, watching the New York skyline as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the city. Bennett has called an emergency board meeting for 8 p.m. The preliminary termination paperwork for Blackwell has been processed, and Murray has been placed on administrative leave. HR is conducting interviews with Alvarez and Rodriguez as we speak. Michael nodded, though James couldn't see him. And the protocol. Their technical team has reached out to Nexus for implementation consultations. They're treating this with the urgency it deserves. Good. Have legal prepare the contract amendment with the compliance penalties we discussed. I want it ready for signature when the current contract expires next month. Already in progress, James confirmed. And sir, for what it's worth, what you did today will change things for a lot of kids, not just Zoe. It's a start, Michael replied, but only if we ensure they follow through. He ended the call and rejoined Zoe and Elena in the living room. And this one is a garnet I found in Arizona, Zoe was explaining, holding up a small reddish stone. Daddy took me to a real mine where we could dig for treasures. It's beautiful, Elena admired. You know, when I was about your age, my father took me to the beaches of Puerto Rico to look for sea glass. I still have some of the pieces I found. Really? Can I see them sometime? Zoe asked excitedly. Of course, querida. Next time you visit, I'll show you my whole collection. Michael smiled at the easy rapport between them. Dinner should be here soon. Elena, can I offer you something to drink? Water, wine, coffee. A small glass of wine would be lovely, thank you. As Michael poured the drinks, his phone buzzed with a text from Thomas Bennett Board, unanimously approved immediate implementation of Zoe protocol. Press release going out tonight. Can we arrange follow-up meeting tomorrow to discuss partnership moving forward? Michael typed a brief response. James will coordinate. Expect comprehensive documentation and accountability metrics to be central to our continued relationship. The doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of dinner. As they gathered around the table, Michael observed how Zoe had already begun to recover from the day's trauma. Children were resilient, but they also absorbed lessons both good and bad from every experience. Today, Zoe had learned that injustice could be confronted, that standing up for oneself mattered, and that there were always people willing to help if you looked for them. Daddy, Zoe said between bites of pasta, is the lady who was mean to me going to lose her job forever? Michael considered how to answer truthfully while remaining age-appropriate. Ms. Blackwell won't be working for Skyalite anymore. Her actions had consequences. But what will she do now? Won't she be sad? Elena exchanged a glance with Michael, impressed by the child's capacity for empathy, even toward someone who had hurt her. She'll find another job, Michael assured her. But hopefully she'll learn from this experience and make better choices in the future. Zoe nodded, processing this. Like when I was mean to Jasmine at school last year and you made me apologize and then help her with her science project. Something like that, Michael agreed. Actions have consequences, but they can also lead to growth and change. Do you think she'll change? Michael sighed softly. I don't know, Zoe Bear. That's up to her. But what I do know is that the airline is going to change because of what happened to you today. They're creating something called the Zoe Protocol to make sure other children are treated better. Zoe's eyes widened. They named it after me. They did. Because your experience is going to help protect other kids. A smile spread across Zoe's face, the first genuine one since the incident on the plane. That's pretty cool. Yes, Michael agreed, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. It is pretty cool, and I'm very proud of how brave you were today. The evening continued pleasantly with Elena sharing stories of her travels and Zoe gradually returning to her usual animated self. When it came time for Elena to leave, Michael insisted on having his driver take her home. It's the least I can do after everything today, he said as they waited for the elevator. You're a good father, Mr. Phillips, Elena told him quietly. That little girl is lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one, Michael replied with complete sincerity. After Elena's departure, Michael helped Zoe prepare for bed. As he tucked her in, surrounded by her favorite stuffed animals, she asked a question that caught him off guard. Daddy, why was the lady mean to me and not to other kids? Was it because of my skin? Michael sat on the edge of the bed, taking a moment to formulate his response. It wasn't the first time they'd had a version of this conversation, but each instance required careful navigation. Sometimes people have ideas in their heads about who deserves what. He began gently. Those ideas aren't based on who you really are or what you've done. They're based on what you look like or where you come from. And those ideas are wrong, Zoe. They're always wrong. But why do they think that way? That's a big question, Michael acknowledged. People learn those ideas from others or from what they see around them. Sometimes they're afraid of differences or they want to feel special by making others feel less special. But here's what I want you to remember. Their wrong ideas don't change who you are. You are smart, kind, and valuable. Always. Zoe nodded, her eyes serious. Like our mantra. Exactly like our mantra. Want to say it together? They recited in unison. I belong everywhere I go. Michael kissed her forehead. Sleep well, Zoe Bear. Tomorrow's a new day. As Zoe drifted off to sleep, Michael retreated to his home office where the real work was just beginning. The next 48 hours would determine whether Skylight Airways merely weathered a PR crisis or truly transformed its culture. He intended to ensure it was the latter. The following morning brought a flurry of developments. The video of the incident had gone viral overnight, accumulating over 1 million views and spawning numerous articles across travel blogs, news sites, and social media platforms. #Zoe. Protocol was trending with users sharing their own experiences of discrimination while traveling. Skylight's stock had dropped 4% at market opening. Thomas Bennett had issued a formal statement. Skylight Airways acknowledges and deeply regrets the inexcusable treatment of a young passenger on yesterday's Flight 847. The actions of our employee violated our core values and commitment to treating all passengers with dignity and respect. Effective immediately, the employee involved has been terminated, and we are implementing a comprehensive new protocol to ensure such incidents never occur again. The Zoe Protocol, named after the affected child, will establish new standards for the care of unaccompanied minors and strengthen our commitment to equality and inclusion throughout our operations. We are grateful for the opportunity to learn and grow from this experience and are committed to rebuilding trust with all our passengers. Michael reviewed the statement with James over breakfast while Zoe watched cartoons in the living room, still in her pajamas. It's a start, Michael conceded. But words are cheap. I want to see action. You will, James assured him. The technical integration team from Nexus is meeting with their IT department as we speak. The first training modules are being developed, and HR is reviewing crew records for similar complaints that may have been buried. Michael nodded, taking a sip of coffee. And Alvarez and Rodriguez, both called into headquarters this morning. Alvarez is being offered the position of training coordinator for the new protocol with a substantial promotion. Rodriguez is being promoted to lead flight attendant effective immediately. Good. Michael checked his watch. The meeting with Bennett is at 11 yes at their corporate offices. Legal has prepared the contract amendments as requested. Michael smiled slightly. I think I'll bring Zoe along. She should see how her experience is creating change. James raised an eyebrow. Are you sure that's appropriate? The discussions might be, she can wait in the reception area with you during the technical discussions, Michael clarified. But I want her to be part of the formal protocol announcement. She earned that right yesterday. At precisely 11 o'clock, Michael entered the executive conference room at Skylight Airways' New York headquarters, flanked by his legal team. Thomas Bennett greeted them with the forced cheer of a man trying to salvage a critical business relationship. Michael, thank you for coming. We're eager to move forward constructively after yesterday's unfortunate events. Let's be clear about something from the start, Michael replied, taking a seat at the conference table. What happened to my daughter wasn't unfortunate. It was discriminatory, it was deliberate, and it was indicative of broader cultural problems within your organization. Bennett's smile faltered. Yes, of course. You're absolutely right. That's why we're committed to implementing the Zoe protocol immediately and comprehensively. For the next 2 hours, they discussed the technical and operational details of the protocol implementation. Michael's team outlined specific benchmarks, reporting requirements, and accountability mechanisms that would be tied to the contract renewal. Skylight's executives, recognizing the precariousness of their position, agreed to all terms with minimal negotiation. The protocol itself was comprehensive, enhanced training for all customer-facing staff on implicit bias, recognition, and prevention. Special certification requirements for crew members working with unaccompanied minors. Digital tracking system for all passengers with real-time status updates available to parents. Independent review board for discrimination complaints including external auditors. Transparent reporting of complaint resolutions on a quarterly basis. Financial incentives for crew members who receive positive feedback from passengers with special needs. Regular mystery passenger tests to ensure compliance with anti-discrimination policies. As the meeting concluded, Bennett asked, "Will you make a joint announcement with us about the protocol? Your endorsement would carry significant weight." Michael considered the request. "I'll participate on one condition. I want Diego Alvarez and Sofia Rodriguez present as well. They should be recognized for doing the right thing when others didn't." Of course, Bennett agreed quickly. "They're actually here today for their promotion interviews. I can arrange for them to join us immediately." Michael nodded. "And I'd like my daughter to be present for the announcement portion. This protocol bears her name. She should be part of introducing it to the world." Bennett seemed surprised, but agreed. "We'd be honored to have her." James brought Zoe in from the reception area, where she had been reading a book while waiting. She was dressed in a purple dress with a matching headband, looking every bit the poised young lady her parents had raised her to be. Diego and Sofia joined them shortly afterward, both looking slightly overwhelmed by the rapid turn of events in their careers. When Diego saw Zoe, he gave her a friendly wave, which she returned with a smile. The announcement was held in Skylight's press room with photographers and journalists from major networks in attendance. Bennett spoke first, outlining the protocol and expressing the company's commitment to transformation. Then Michael took the podium, Zoe standing beside him. "Yesterday, my daughter experienced something no child should ever face," he began. "She was denied a meal, denied dignity, denied basic courtesy not because of anything she did, but because of how she looked. As her father, I could have simply filed a complaint and moved on, but that would have solved nothing for the next child who boards a flight alone. He placed a hand gently on Zoe's shoulder. The Zoe Protocol isn't just about protecting unaccompanied minors, though that's certainly part of it. It's about acknowledging that the travel experience isn't equal for everyone and taking concrete steps to change that reality. It's about building systems that ensure fairness, even when bias tries to interfere. It's about accountability that goes beyond words to measurable actions and results. Michael gestured to Diego and Sofia, who stood nearby. I want to acknowledge Mr. Alvarez and Ms. Rodriguez, whose courage in standing up for what was right made a crucial difference yesterday. They represent the best of what customer service should be, and I'm pleased that Skylight has recognized their value with well-deserved promotions. Turning back to the audience, he concluded, the true test of the Zoe Protocol will come in the months and years ahead as it moves from concept to everyday reality. Nexus Technologies is committed to supporting this transformation, not just as a business partner, but as part of our broader commitment to creating digital systems that serve everyone equally. Thank you. The press conference generated exactly the positive coverage Skylight desperately needed. Images of Zoe standing confidently beside her father appeared on major news sites alongside headlines praising the comprehensive approach of the new protocol. As they left the Skylight offices, Zoe looked up at her father. Did we make things better? Daddy Michael squeezed her hand. We sure did, Zoe Bear. We sure did. In the days and weeks that followed, the ripple effects of what had happened on Flight 847 continued to spread. Heather Blackwell found herself effectively blacklisted from the commercial aviation industry. Her termination paperwork, citing discriminatory behavior incompatible with company values, appeared in industry databases accessible to other airlines. Job applications were met with polite rejections or silence. Eventually, she found work as a receptionist at a small accounting firm, a position that required the same attention to detail but significantly less authority over others. Victoria Murray's administrative leave extended to 4 weeks, as Skylight conducted a thorough investigation of her tenure as lead flight attendant. The inquiry uncovered a pattern of buried complaints and selective enforcement of rules. Though she wasn't terminated, she was demoted to regular flight attendant status and assigned to a remedial training program focused on bias recognition and prevention. Diego Alvarez embraced his new role with enthusiasm, helping to develop training modules that used the Flight 847 incident as a case study in how not to treat passengers. His expertise and personal experience made the training particularly effective, and crew members consistently rated his sessions as eye-opening and valuable. Sofia Rodriguez thrived as a lead flight attendant, mentoring newer staff members with an emphasis on compassion and equal treatment for all passengers. Her crews consistently received higher customer satisfaction ratings than others, particularly from families traveling with children. Elena Garcia became a regular visitor to the Phillips household. Her warmth and wisdom provided Zoe with a grandmother figure she hadn't had before, and her weekly visits became something both looked forward to eagerly. Skylight Airways. After an initial stock dip saw their public perception scores improve significantly as they implemented the Zoe Protocol with transparent reporting and visible changes. Industry publications noted the protocol as a potential new standard for airlines worldwide, and 3 competing carriers reached out to Skylight about adopting similar measures. For Michael and Zoe, life gradually returned to normal, though with a deeper appreciation for the impact one voice could have when raised against injustice. Zoe returned to school with a new story to tell her friends, not just about the scary experience on the plane, but about how her name was now attached to something that would help other kids. The most meaningful moment came 6 weeks later when Zoe needed to fly back to Chicago to visit her mother. Despite Michael's offer to book a private flight, Zoe insisted on taking a regular Skylight flight. "I want to see if it's different now," she explained. Michael agreed, though he arranged to take the same flight in first class just as before. The difference was immediately apparent at check-in, where Zoe received not just the standard lanyard but also a tablet preloaded with a child-friendly app that explained her journey and allowed her to message both parents from the plane. The gate agent who greeted her wore a small pin with a compass symbol, the new identifier for crew members certified under the Zoe protocol. She knelt to Zoe's eye level and introduced herself warmly. "You must be Zoe Phillips. I'm Lisa, and I'll be your guardian at the gate today. We've been expecting you and have everything ready for your journey." As Zoe boarded the aircraft, she was greeted by name by every crew member. Her special meal was confirmed 3 times, and the flight attendant assigned to her section checked on her regularly throughout the flight. But perhaps the most telling moment came during meal service, when Zoe observed another child, a young Hispanic boy traveling alone, receive the exact same attentive care she had. When Michael visited her seat mid-flight, she whispered excitedly, "Daddy, did you see? They're treating everyone the same now. It's working." Michael smiled, his heart full. "That's the whole point, Zoe Bear. That's exactly the whole point." 1 year later, Zoe Phillips stood in Terminal 3 at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, her purple backpack slung over one shoulder and a small rolling suitcase beside her. At 10 years old, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced adversity and emerged stronger. "Are you sure you're okay flying alone?" Jasmine asked, kneeling to straighten Zoe's collar. "Dad and I can always arrange for one of us to fly with you." Zoe shook her head. "I'm fine, Mom. I've done this lots of times now." Jasmine smiled, pride mingling with the natural concern of a parent. In the year since the incident that had led to the Zoe protocol, her daughter had matured in ways both subtle and profound. The once anxious child who had clutched a compass for comfort now approached flying with practiced ease. Besides, Zoe added, "Flying is different now. Different indeed." As they approached the check-in counter, they were greeted by an agent wearing the now familiar compass pin that identified staff trained under the Zoe protocol. "Good morning. Are you traveling as an unaccompanied minor today?" the agent asked warmly. "Yes, I'm flying to see my dad in New York," Zoe confirmed. "Wonderful. Let's get you checked in and set up with everything you'll need for a great journey." The process was smooth and reassuring. Zoe received her special lanyard, now redesigned with a built-in digital tracker that allowed both parents to monitor her location throughout the journey. The attached tablet displayed her flight information, the names and photos of crew members assigned to her care, and a messaging system that connected directly to the aircraft's communication systems. "We've noted your allergy requirements," the agent confirmed. "Your special meal is already prepared and tagged with your seat number. The crew has been notified and you'll be boarded first so they can introduce themselves before other passengers arrive." As they waited at the gate, Jasmine marveled at the transformation. "It's amazing how much has changed in a year." "Dad says that's how progress works," Zoe replied. "Sometimes it takes something bad happening before people make things better." The gate area now featured a dedicated section for unaccompanied minors, staffed by a specially trained agent wearing the compass pin. Several other children sat in the area, each with their own lanyard and tablet, chatting comfortably under the watchful eye of the agent. When boarding was announced, the guardian approached Zoe with a smile. "Ready to board, Ms. Phillips. Your crew is excited to meet you." Zoe hugged her mother goodbye. "See you next week, Mom. I'll message you when I land. Have a safe flight, sweetheart. I love you." "Love you too." As Zoe walked down the jet bridge, there was no trace of the anxiety that had marked her first solo journey a year before. The flight attendant at the aircraft door greeted her by name. "Welcome aboard, Zoe. I'm Carlos, and I'll be your primary guardian for today's flight. Let me show you to your seat and introduce you to the rest of the crew." Her seat 14B, just like before now, featured a welcome card with her name and a small compass charm, a symbolic reminder of the protocol that bore her name. Carlos knelt beside her seat to explain the tablet functions. If you need anything at all, just press this button. I'll be checking on you regularly, but this lets you reach me anytime. Your special meal is already prepared, and we'll serve it as soon as we reach cruising altitude." "Thank you," Carlos Zoe replied politely. "It's an honor to have you on our flight, Zoe. You know, every crew member learns about you during their Zoe protocol training. You've made flying better for a lot of kids." Zoe smiled, a mixture of shyness and pride crossing her face. "My dad says sometimes change needs a catalyst." Carlos chuckled. "Your dad sounds very wise. He's in first class today, right? I'll make sure he can visit once we're in the air." As other passengers boarded, Zoe observed how the crew greeted each unaccompanied minor with the same careful attention she had received. There were 6 UMs on the flight representing various backgrounds and ages, but all received identical care and consideration. Once at cruising altitude, Michael made his way back to economy to check on Zoe. "How's it going, Zoe Bear?" he asked, crouching in the aisle beside her. "Great, Carlos already brought my special meal and the tablet has games and movies." Michael smiled. "Quite a difference from last year, isn't it?" "Yeah. I was just thinking about Mrs. Garcia. I wish she could see this. I'm sure she'd be very proud of you. Speaking of which, she's expecting us for dinner tomorrow. She mentioned something about showing you her sea glass collection." Zoe beamed. "I can't wait. I brought some of my new rocks to show her too." Their conversation was interrupted by a voice from across the aisle. "Excuse me. Are you Zoe Phillips?" They turned to see a woman with 2 children, a boy about Zoe's age and a younger girl. "My son recognized you from the training video they show at check-in," the woman explained. "He wanted to thank you." The boy gave a shy wave. "They said the Zoe protocol was named after you. I have peanut allergies too, and the flight attendants were super nice about it. So, thanks." Zoe smiled broadly. "You're welcome." After Michael returned to his seat, Zoe sat back and watched the clouds outside her window. She thought about how one difficult day had turned into something that helped so many others. Her compass sat in her pocket, still a comfort, but no longer a necessity. She belonged everywhere she went. And now, thanks to the protocol bearing her name, other children felt that belonging too. When the flight landed at JFK, Carlos escorted Zoe to the designated meeting area where Michael was waiting. As they walked through the terminal, Zoe noticed other children with the same lanyards being united with waiting family members, each handoff carefully documented and confirmed. "Your daughter is a delight to have on board," Carlos told Michael. "She's quite the celebrity among our crew." "Thank you for taking such good care of her," Michael replied, shaking the flight attendant's hand. As they left the airport, Zoe looked up at her father. "Do you think the protocol will stay forever?" Daddy Michael considered the question thoughtfully. The name might change someday, or the technology might evolve. But the principle behind it, treating everyone with dignity, regardless of who they are, that should last forever. And you helped make that happen. Zoe nodded, satisfied with his answer. That's what matters, right? Not the name, but what it does. Exactly right, Zoe Bear. Exactly right. The impact of the Zoe protocol extended far beyond Skylight Airways. Within months, it had been adopted by 4 other major carriers, each implementing their own version of the comprehensive approach to unaccompanied minor care and anti-discrimination training. The protocol received recognition from travel advocacy groups and child welfare organizations. Industry publications highlighted it as a model for addressing bias in customer service, and the compass symbol became recognized throughout the aviation community as a marker of specialized training and accountability. Michael Phillips received numerous awards for corporate responsibility, though he consistently redirected the attention to the frontline staff who implemented the changes, and to Zoe, whose courage had sparked the transformation. Diego Alvarez was promoted to Director of Customer Experience Training, overseeing the implementation of bias prevention programs across all Skylight operations. Sofia Rodriguez became the youngest senior lead flight attendant in the company's history, mentoring new hires, with an emphasis on equal treatment for all passengers. Most importantly, reports of discriminatory incidents across Skylight's operations decreased by 78% in the first year of the protocol's implementation. Customer satisfaction scores for families traveling with children reached an all-time high, and the company's stock not only recovered from its initial drop, but climbed to record levels as their reputation for inclusive service grew. For Zoe, the most meaningful outcome wasn't the policy changes or the industry recognition. It was the knowledge that her experience had made travel safer and more dignified for countless children who would never know her name but would benefit from her legacy. As she and her father walked hand in hand through the bustling New York streets, Zoe's compass nestled safely in her pocket. She thought about all the other children finding their way home across the skies, each one treated with respect, each one valued, each one belonging everywhere they went, and that she decided was the true direction of progress. Have you or your child ever experienced discrimination while traveling? What did you do about it? Share your story in the comments below. Your experiences matter, and together we can continue building a world where dignity isn't determined by appearance, but guaranteed as a right. If this video resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming stories of justice and accountability. Our next video explores how a Black doctor was questioned about her credentials during a medical emergency on a cruise ship, and the industry-wide changes that followed. Remember, change doesn't always require being a CEO with influence. Sometimes it just takes one voice, even a child's voice, willing to stand up and say, "This isn't right." And when that voice is heard and amplified, real transformation happens. Thank you for watching this story. If it moved you, please like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Together, we're making travel safer and more dignified for everyone, one flight at a time.